Kira Lesson and Dr. Sasha Lesson.
Together, we transform the world.
And now, here are your hosts, Janet Kira and Dr. Sasha Lesson.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sacred Matrix on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Excuse me. I'm your host, Janet Lesson, excuse me, with my co-host, Dr. Sasha Lesson. And today we have a special guest, Dave Schmidt, and we're going to talk about the dragon families and who they are and what they mean to humanity. But before we go into our show, I'm going to get to Dave's bio and read a little bit about him for you. 1 second while I scroll down. So Dave Schmidt has a unique background. Wait 1 second, gotta fix my screen. You wouldn't expect to be discussing metaphysical or higher energy issues combined with money and finance. Dave spent 20 years in politics, including 12 years in the Washington State Legislature, finishing as a state senator. The other side is Dave's spiritual and financial backgrounds. He has a BA in religion and an MA in theology, and he has spent 12 years in active church ministry prior to his years in politics, and he combines all of that with an original career in banking and finance, which includes 19 years as a market trader. And yes, he was a conservative minister and a Republican politician who now discusses metaphysical and cutting-edge issues. He likes to call himself a recovering senator. Dave can be as unique as Sedona. They are a good fit. Communicating with others and discussing the meaning of life issues has always been his love. You'll see it and hear it as you join him on his website, the Sedona Connection, and he has a radio show. And we are very blessed to have Dave here today with us. Dr. Lesson, what would you like to say before we bring on Dave Schmidt?
Well, Dave has got some real great things to offer us so we can understand how the ancient need of the Anunnaki from Nibiru for gold has transformed into a manipulation of the gold, which in turn is beggaring all of us. And Dave has some answers how to get beyond that, but I can tell you it's got to do with the overvaluation of the elites, who are just people like us.
And welcome to our show, Dave.
Well, thank you both, Janet and Sasha. It's a wonderful pleasure to be with you here tonight. And for the folks that don't know, in the last 2 weeks, I've had both of you on my program because it was just a couple weeks ago that I had visited your home in Maui. And it was there I posted a 1-hour interview I had with Sasha. And then on my radio program last Wednesday night, I had both of you on there, and we had a 2-hour program there. So if people want to get some more information, they can go to my website, thesedonaconnection.com. And where I was on the program tonight, I'm on the other end, and I'm with you, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here with you. So, yeah, thank you.
Well, we are so excited. Dave came to Maui, came in through our house twice, and we did some filming and interviews, and we're going back and forth because we're really hot on this issue. And this issue, Dave, I want you to take the time and connect the dots. Who and what are these dragon families? And they have different colors, the red, the white, the blue, the purple, the orange, the yellow. What colors are the dragon families? What does that mean? And we'll start. I did a bunch of, I made a list of questions on our AquarianRadio.com website where I keep all of our shows, just like Dave keeps it all on the Sedona, all of his on the Sedona Connection. But this is a really hot issue, and it's affecting all of humanity. So how about slow it down, and we'll start with you, and you give us a little bit of background.
Okay. Yeah. First, just let me make a comment. No, you read there from my bio, and I like to say if a life can change, I'm a reflection of that, because I used to be this very Republican conservative senator who was a Republican Christian Pentecostal minister, and I've almost gone through a 180-degree shift and change in my life in the last 6 to 8 years. I've been on a really fast track, as guess what I would say, in my own awakening process and understanding all of this. And what I discovered, I felt, was that my first 58 years of my life prepared me for everything that I'm doing right now. I absolutely love what I do. I absolutely believe that I'm in a divine calling, what I'm doing. And I experience that because this stuff just keeps finding me. I don't have to go out and try to find it. And this whole, let me take a little bit background what led up to my connection with the dragon family, and then I'll talk about who they are, how they fit in with the Anunnaki, which is, your specialty. And we'll go from there. But it was about, we all go through seasons and sessions of our life where we call, the dark night of the soul. After I had finished being in the Washington State Legislature in 2006, I went into a real estate development project. I put everything I had into it. We had the economic crash in 2008, and I crashed. I lost absolutely everything. I had to file bankruptcy, lost my home to foreclosure, didn't have a job. But at the same time, I was going through this huge transformation on the inside. I was beginning to really wake up. It was when I discovered that the whole 2008 economic crash was totally manipulated and planned by the highest people at Wall Street. It was called a classic planned pump and dump, where they pump up the debt, and pump up the debt, and then they crash the economy. And what they do is that they eliminate their competition. They become more and more wealthy out of it. And it came at the expense of literally millions and millions of Americans. And I was one of those. I lost everything. And when I saw that, it just plain pissed me off. And that motivated me to start doing my research. And as I started doing the research about who they were and how they manipulated and controlled the world's finances, it began to just lead to a lot of other things. And it was what I call understanding and discovering what is called the shadow world that is out there. We know that our governments are controlled by shadow controllers. We know that the world's money supply is run and manipulated by the Federal Reserve and the Rothschilds bankers. We know that most of what goes on there in our military is designed about power and control and manipulation over the world. And we've all experienced the reality is that most of our human race is a history of a few kings, monarchs, and dictators controlling the masses and keeping us in various forms of slavery. Our biggest slavery in the last 200 and 300 years has been financial slavery, at least for those of us in the Western world. Well, that kind of led one thing to another. I ended up leaving the Seattle area where I had lived for 32 years, and 3.5 years ago I moved here to Sedona. And I love this place. That's another whole story about the magic of Sedona. This is truly a magical place. It truly is a place where what you call the electromagnetic energy of the earth here vibrates at a higher vibration than anywhere else in all of North or Central America. It's a very unique place. It's only about a 12-mile radius here where there's a very high energy vibration here. And it attracts all kinds of people, and that's why Sedona would be called, kind of the metaphysical healing capital almost of the world. We get about 4 million visitors a year coming through here. But I live here now. I love this place. It is home for me. And I went through another kind of secondary dark night of the soul, lost my job. I was about 1 day away from being homeless. I had $56 in my bank account, and my life took a second change. But Janet, sounded like you wanted to ask a question there. So.
Oh, well, no, you're doing great.
Okay.
I just was.
Okay. Well, I'll keep going.
That the economic collapse affected us as well, and the people that I know, my sister, many friends, and so I think everybody knows somebody that was affected by that collapse.
I think that was a magnificent summary of history. It was commanding. Thank you so much.
Do continue.
Well, the absolute elite that run and control the world's money supply, it was a planned pump and dump on their part. It puts them in greater power and control than ever before. And it keeps the masses in financial slavery. And it did that literally to millions and millions of people, not just in the United States, but around most of the modernized, westernized world. People who owned real estate, owned homes, took huge, huge hits. And some of them, here we are now, 2008, we're in, 8 years later, and some people are still recovering from that, what it had done. People had lost 40 and 50% of their retirement accounts. Now, you can say, well, the stock market is back up higher than it's ever been before. Yes, it is, but here's what most people don't know. It's falsely manipulated, again, by those same people. They have created and manipulated a false bubble in the stock market, the Dow Jones Industrial. Well, when there's a bubble, that bubble is going to crash. And if you've got money in the stock market, I would advise you to take a really strong look at it, because I've been around market trading. I've been a part-time market trader now for over 19 years, so I understand the ebbs and flows of market. I think we are finally at that point where we're going to see the crash, because the Dow Jones Industrial lost 10% in just the last 2 weeks. The key is going to be, now, tomorrow is a holiday. It's a 3-day weekend. The key will be the 4 days next week. If this market does not recover and bounce back, then we're on our way to a crash, in my estimation. It's all bubbles always collapse and pop. They always do. And it was the Federal Reserve that falsely manipulated and pushed up the stock market to try to get people falsely thinking that they're okay and that they're secure. But they play with them on a yo-yo, up and down and up and down, and they do that because they become stronger and powerful and put more people into slavery financially.
So would you advise people to sell short?
Well, I don't want to give that advice, because everybody needs to make their own personal decisions, because everybody has different perspectives on the market and and their knowledge levels are very, very different. I would say, though, you may want to look at preserving your capital. Make sure you preserve it and you don't take a big loss. And if you know how to short the market, if you're knowledgeable on it, then you may want to do that. I'll tell you what I'm doing. I'm doing that. I am in a position where I'm going to be starting next week, where I'm going to be doing some put options on the NASDAQ, which is the broader index. And traditionally, it's always the NASDAQ that leads the way. If there is a rally, the NASDAQ will rally higher than the Dow and S&P. If there's a drop that is going on, the NASDAQ will lead the way. And it did that again in the last 2 weeks. The NASDAQ had lost about 2 to 3 percentage points, but then both the Dow and the S&P. And so that's always the key one to watch, because it leads the way. And I think this week is going to be the key week, because when there's a drop, there's always some people who look at it as a buy-in opportunity, so they jump in and pop it back up. So the key is, I think we'll probably see a rally on Tuesday, but will the rally hold? And then what you really want to watch for is the last hour of the day trading, because that tells you, is there confidence in this rally, or are they basically letting it push up and then they're going to buy it when it's a little bit up and get out so they can get out at a higher spot. It's the ebbs and flows of the market and how you watch it. But I think we're coming into a financial collapse. The markets have to collapse. All of the G7 countries are in debt beyond their ability to recover. They will never, ever be able to pay off their debt. And it's like they've been living and operating on credit cards that they have no intentions of paying back. And the powers that be, not what I would call the elite, cabal, Illuminati powers that be, but the powers that be above them, the dragon family, has called their debt. And I'll explain that later. They did that about a little over a year ago. They basically told the cabal elite no more. And it's how they operate and run and control the world's finances. But they also have what they call as a directive that they cannot interfere with the free will of the human race. So they're in somewhat of a dichotomy. They can call some shots, but they can't hands-on manipulate and control everything that goes on. Now, let me step back and lead how I got up into that, okay?
Can I ask a question about what you said so far? I'm trying to...
yeah, go right ahead.
The G7 and the major industrial giants are all way in debt, and if somebody was going to invest, they would invest in countries and the bonds of those countries that lack such debt. Would that be a conclusion that's fair to come to from what you've said?
Yes, it is, but we're seeing huge change in that. You see, one of the reasons why the United States has been able to run up its debt so much is because it had what was called the control of the petrodollar. See, the United States used to have gold-backed currency, and then in 1971, President Nixon took us off of that gold standard. Well, shortly right after that, they instituted what was called the petrodollar, because they knew that oil was the new world's gold. It was through oil that you would control the world's economy. And they established that all oil transactions between buying and selling countries had to be done in U.S. dollars. So when you had huge oil exporting countries like Saudi Arabia and Russia and Iran and Libya and some of those others, they were getting huge excess amounts of U.S. dollars coming into their country. So they'd have these large stash of U.S. dollars, and so what they would do, they would go out and buy U.S. bonds with them. And as long as they were buying all those bonds, then Congress could continue to run up the debt without it having huge inflationary impacts upon us. And they've been doing that, and with that money, they've been funding the war machine. The war machine for the last 10 to 15 years of the war in the Middle East, and they just keep funding it behind the scenes because people get rich. It's power and control is what it is. Well, something changed in the last year. They have cut off the petrodollar. The BRICS nations, which are Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, have combined together to stand up against the United States. And they basically have said, no more. We are no longer going to trade oil in U.S. dollars. You cannot force us to do that. We do not have to do that. And we are now strong enough collectively to say to you, the United States, we're not going to follow your slavery anymore. And so what a lot of people don't know, that the world's largest oil exporter is not Saudi Arabia, it's Russia. And so, but Russia is no longer selling its oil and asking to be paid in U.S. dollars. It's asking to be paid in the currency of the country that they're selling it to. And one of the largest oil importers is China. And so China is no longer transacting U.S. dollars for its oil. It's now doing it in its own Chinese yuan. What that means is these countries don't have these huge excesses of U.S. dollars to buy our U.S. bonds. That means Congress can no longer run up this debt, and that means that the money's going to dry up for the war machine. That's a very positive thing that we had to come to, because we have to basically come to the point where we're going to stop the wars and the war machine in the Middle East. And that ties into about the economic shift and change and moving into what we call the global currency reset, bringing forth the new currencies, what are called the Treasury Reserve Notes versus the Federal Reserve Notes. It puts us back onto what is called a gold standard for the economy. If you want to read an excellent book about how the cabal, the Illuminati, the elite, totally runs and controls the world's money supply, you want to read what's called The Creature from Jekyll Island by J. Edward Griffin. And he outlines the history of the Federal Reserve, how it came into being, how it runs and controls the world's money supply, how it dominates central banks all around the world, and how they either control directly, indirectly all of the money in this world, in the financial banking systems. And
who was that by again? I didn't know the name. That was
J. Edward Griffin, and it's called The Creature from Jekyll Island. And Jekyll Island, it was back in 1913, is where they designed the Federal Reserve, and to set up a central banking system. See, and who was behind it, why they did it, the history of it, who those powerful Illuminati controlling families are. Most people don't know that the Federal Reserve is not a government agency. It is a private corporation. It is predominantly run and controlled by four of the dominant families here on the planet: the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the Morgans of J.P. Morgan, and the Warburgs out of Germany. They run the world's money supply. Now, there are sub-families underneath them. You can go on the internet and on YouTube, and you can see videos about what is called the 13 Illuminati families. Those 13 families are traditionally called the cabal, the Illuminati, and they use money to run and control the world and to keep most of us in financial slavery. And the good news is that's coming to an end. we as a human race are beginning to wake up. And as we're beginning to wake up, we are in the process of beginning to set ourselves free. And that's the good news about all of this. And that is where you'll see part of the role of the dragon family that they play in that, because they've got kind of a dichotomy role in when you understand who they are. But if I can do this, let me take a step back and lead. I'll just wrap it up in a couple minutes how I got involved with them. When I had gone through what I call my second dark night of the soul, and I was one day away from being homeless, and I only had $56 in my checking account. I mean, could I have gone out and gotten a job? Of course I would. I could have. But everything inside of me, spirit was screaming at me, trust this process. And in the process, I ended up kind of being a security person at a church, and I was sleeping on the floor in their foyer on an air mattress for 2 months. And that was 2 months where I was totally able to let go of all my old stuff of being a senator, my old stuff of my past life, and was just it was like a sabbatical for me. Well, in that process, I was introduced to this whole issue around what is called the dinar currency exchange. And it sounded reasonable. I had stayed away from it for a long time because I said I couldn't get anybody to answer the question, well, how are they going to fund this, this revaluation? They call it an RV. It stands for revaluation. And a quick history is it's common that when a country goes into war, that the United Nations will come together and they will devalue that country's currency that's on the opposite side, and they will do that until the war is over, and then they will reinstate their currency. Now, that happened in the first Gulf War in 1990 when Saddam Hussein went into Kuwait, took over Kuwait. Kuwait has a dinar just like Iraq has a dinar, and the Kuwaiti dinar was one of the strongest currencies in the world. It traded at $3.50 to $1. So if you had one dinar, you could get $3.50 US dollars money for it. When Saddam Hussein went in and took over Kuwait, robbed their banks, stole all their dinar, and took over their country, the United Nations immediately collapsed and devalued Kuwaiti's dinar to 5 cents. And it stayed that way for about 6 to 7 months until their conflict was over. Well, in the process, the United States government secretly went in and bought billions and billions of the Kuwaiti dinar at 5 cents. And there were insiders in the government that knew about this. The government did it. And the only everyday common people that had an opportunity to participate in this were basically the soldiers, the military people that were there. And there were some American soldiers that would go in and buy hundreds of thousands of Kuwaiti dinar at 5 cents. Well, that started in August of 1990, and then by the time March of 91 rolled around, when the conflict was over, the United Nations overnight reinstated the Kuwaiti dinar back to around the 350. Well, what happened is these American soldiers became overnight millionaires. And also what a lot of people don't realize is that the United States government, that's how they were paid back for their involvement in the war. And they literally got hundreds of billions of dollars overnight. And that is why shortly after that, when Bill Clinton came in to be president, that we didn't have a deficit because they used that to pay off our debt. And that's the part of the history you don't hear about on the public side. Well, let's now advance to Iraq. This same thing is happening. The Iraqi dinar gets, dropped its value. It goes from around $3.42 per dinar to 1/10 of a penny. And so what happens is there's blog sites and rumors and going around that the same thing is going to happen with the Iraqi dinar that happened with the Kuwaiti dinar. So people are starting to jump on the bandwagon. But here's what's different this time. This time we have the internet, and people are talking to each other. When Kuwait was there, we didn't have the internet. So you didn't get to participate in that unless you had some inside scoop and you were on location in Kuwait to buy that dinar there. Well, now you got the internet, everybody's talking about it, and they're all going out, and literally there are millions and millions of people that have gone out and bought an Iraqi dinar thinking the same thing is going to happen. And so I asked the question, well, somebody's got to come up with the money to pay for this. And so they explained what was called the oil credits contracts with me, and that's another whole story, and I don't have time to go into all that right now, but I realized now that made sense. So I bought a little bit. and I'd buy a little bit more just here and there. And I had a group of about 35 people in Sedona that I was helping with through this process. And then we rolled around and that started in June, I should say, May or June. And then by the time we rolled around to late September, I was reading the different blog sites, and there was people that were reporting on some stuff. And I realized this one guy was making a report, and everybody was talking about it as though it was the most important thing and the best stuff out there. And with my experience in banking, I said, this guy's full of crock. He has no idea what he is talking about. He's shooting from the hip. He's just speculating in all kinds of stuff, and that is not how the banking industry works. So I sat down to write a letter to explain to my 35 friends, don't listen to this guy. And when I sat down, all I can say, it was one of those inspiration moments. And it was like there was the presence of the Spirit that was there. And 9 hours later, I ended up writing this 10-page letter that turned into an article that got put on 2 different, what I call Iraqi dinar blog sites. And the next thing I know, I received over 1,000 emails in the next 10 days. And so that kind of catapulted me out there. I was talking about, the dinar exchange and all this kind of stuff. And I was appearing on some of the other blog sites. But then I started challenging all the other blog writers. I said, who's going to pay for this? So you got to explain this somewhere where all this money is going to come up with. And they started banning me from my sites because I was challenging them on the truth. And they didn't want to answer those questions until today. Still, they won't answer that question because I was saying, hey, this money just doesn't, appear out of nowhere. But I started saying within 1 month, at the end of October, the only place on this planet that has the money to fund an RV, a revaluation of the Iraqi dinar, as all these other blog writers are talking about, is the Dragon family. I had become aware of the Dragon family about 3 years prior. I knew and understood that they had these large, huge reserves of gold that was never available to the public. The public never knew about it, and they had kept this in what I call isolation and secrecy for hundreds, if not thousands of years. I knew they could fund it. And so starting in late October, I just kept saying, the only place that can fund this is the Dragon family. Well, in the process, as we roll around till July of the next year, and that would be July of 2014, I'm starting to get thrown under the bus by some of the other, blog writers, and they're attacking me. And then the next thing you know, I get this email, and it says, the ambassador of the Red Dragon family would like to start a conversation and a dialogue with you. And they basically had reached out to me, and I said, well, why me? And I says, because you're the only one that is out there that's telling the truth. You're the only one that's out there saying that the only place the money can come from to fund what they're talking about is what we have. And so that started about a 3-month process where he and I would talk 3 and 4 times a week. We would go for 45 minutes to an hour and a half, and he just started educating me about the family. And that was led up into then in October of 2014. We were talking about funding projects, and that's where that whole issue got kicked off. And then a couple months later, in the first couple weeks in December of 2014, I was invited to go to China. And he says, you're going to go to China, and you're going to get to sit down, and you're going to get to meet and have dinner with the Red Dragon. And the ambassador said to me, you're going to sit down and have dinner and have a conversation with 2 men who run and control the world. And I thought, huh? I didn't say anything, and I'm just thinking, okay, I'll sit and listen. This is going to be an interesting trip. Mm-hmm. But he explained to me how the real global financial situation operates. He explained to me who the family is. He explained to me how they really are the ones who, he says the Dragon family owns 95% of all the money in the world. Now, at first, that kind of blows you away because you're saying, okay, now am I hearing this correctly? Could this really be true? And he went on to explain why. And he says, we have these reserves of gold. And they showed me the pictures, and it's gold beyond your comprehension. You can't even begin to comprehend it. And he says, we have meticulous record keeping that goes back hundreds, if not over 1,000 years, of all the financial activity that's gone on with all the countries of the world. And the reason we can say that we own 95% of all the money in the world is because money is not property. When you look at a dollar bill, what does it say on it? Federal Reserve note. It's a loan. All money, all currency, whether in currency form or in digital form, is a loan. And it's loaned from the Dragon family. And they collateralize every dollar in every bank on this planet, whether it's individuals or countries. And it's loaned out to the world. And it's all collateralized by the gold that they have under their control. And that is why they can make that statement. Because it's always been under their control. And so now I think...
they invent this system of money and...
no. In fact,
invented it?
Well, let's go back to the statements that you guys have in your book. And this comes back to, the Anunnaki. And I believe, if I remember right, Sasha, what you said was after, it was somewhere, I think, before or after the deluge, is when Nanar sets up the world's money system. And also what you said in your book is that the Anunnaki was, if I remember it correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, is that you'd written in your book that the Anunnaki was commanded to set up this royal bloodline family here on planet Earth, and they would rule and run and control the humans through until the right appointed time. Now, that was correct. Is that correct how you had said that in your book?
Those are both totally correct. And
yes.
They were tired of incessant wars, and Nanar said, we can get people to stop fighting if we get them to start trading and owing each other goods and services and currency, and they wrote bills, just like we have now.
See, and the Dragon family are those royal bloodline families. Now, let me explain who they are consisted of. They are not just Chinese. They are the royal bloodline families that come out of Europe, the Middle East, Asia, and China. And I designate the difference between Asia and China. Asia would be parts of India, the South Pacific, Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, and places like that would be Asia, in contrast to China. And there are different colors of the dragon family. Now, let's talk about the term dragon. In our Western culture, because of the dominance of what we call, the Catholicism of Christianity, dragons are looked upon as negative. But when you go to, in the Middle East and in Asia, the dragon is honored. It's honored as a symbol of royalty and of power. That is why in Chinese New Year's parades, you always see it led by the dragon. The dragon is the symbol of royalty, it's the symbol of power, and it's the symbol of honor throughout all of the cultures in Asia and parts of the Middle East.
So, Dave, I got to say also, I might add a little bit to that. Among the Maya also, flying serpents and dragons are often an allusion to the flying machines that the Anunnaki actually use. And having a dragon or being inside of a dragon or having the dragon power means often that you have a spacecraft at your command.
Yeah.
But aren't dragons in some part of existence somewhere, which is something that rarely gets addressed, aren't they actually a real species that exists somewhere? So I'll just put that question out there.
Well, historically...
we go into war like World War II, we would paint our planes like birds and stuff.
Yeah,
and even on Star Trek, the Romulans have a bird.
Historically, the indigenous cultures will tell you that the dragons did physically exist at some time. And there are some that still believe there are probably still some of them that are very isolated that are still here on the planet. But they were in actual existence. And that's what the indigenous cultures will teach us. But let me go back to now the history. So that's the concept. I'm sorry, go ahead, Sasha.
When you have two hypotheses, it's their spacecraft and it's an actual species. Yeah. Usually you find out that both those are accurate.
Yeah. Yeah, because to me the physical is symbolic of what's coming, out of what are called the alien and ET races, what we have physically on the planet. That's just my, my position. But so I call them the family because internally that's only how they refer themselves to. They refer themselves to the family. Externally, they're called the dragon family, and then you have the different colors. And the red dragon family is symbolic of China, of the Chinese influence. And the Chinese do have the strongest influence on the dragon family organization. But red is the Chinese color. When you hear about the green dragons, it comes out of the Middle East. Now, if you will notice, all of the countries in the Middle East have green in their country flags. You see, green is the royal color of the Middle East. The white dragons are European, and they come out of Europe. You will hear others, like sometimes you'll hear blue dragons, and then you'll hear golden dragons. And golden dragons are symbolic of the collective of all of the different colors combined. The whites, the greens, the blues, the reds, etc. You'll even hear some references to black dragons, which is another branch of what they call this whole dragon family issue. Black dragons are not necessarily symbolic of a certain region or family or color. The black dragons are symbolic of what would be kind of like the magicians or the shamans of the family, going back to ancient traditions. The black is the color of the spiritual influence. And see, it's ironic now, Western culture, because of its influence of Catholicism, will take black and look at it as negative. But the Asian cultures will take it and look at it as a positive, is what they do. You see, the black dragons.
Who were the blue dragons?
What's that?
The blue dragons. Who were they?
I don't know. I don't remember who he said the blue ones are. I don't remember that. But you have the four major areas of Europe, the Middle East, Asia, and China, and they comprise the dragon family. Now, in that family, they have a senior ruling council of 14 elders, and 9 of them are dragons and 5 of them are tigers, and those are reflective of the parts of the world that they come from. And they rule the family. But here's what's interesting. To serve on that council, you are brought, and I'm explaining this as it has been explained to me from the ambassador, okay? The ambassador is their public spokesperson of the family. He is a part of the administration ruling a part of the family. And these are the dialogues that I have had with him over a period of over a year. And this is how it is. I've come to understand it as he has explained it to me. In that ruling council, they acquire those positions by coming up through their family lines. And these family lines go back literally hundreds, if not over 1,000 years. As an example, there are two or three different Chinese family lines. Those are the family lines of the ancient Chinese dynasties. You had the Ming dynasty, you had the Li dynasty, and some of the others, you see. And so those would come up through those family lines. And that's how they get appointed to this council. So now you've got these 14 ruling elders, and believe me, they can be very dysfunctional. They don't always all agree, and they don't always all get together, because some of them are what you would call very spiritually advanced and wise and what you call evolved, where others are still deeply tied into the 3D world. They are very supportive of the cabal and the Illuminati, and the cabal goes to them and has permission to have access to them. And so you get this dichotomy on the council. So you've got a council that really is very split and very dysfunctional. Now, how many on each side? I don't know that. I don't have any idea. But here's one thing that the ambassador did tell me. It was about a year and a half ago that the cabal, and I refer to them, instead of using the term Illuminati, I use the term cabal. The cabal actually approached the family and asked for permission to eliminate 1/3 of the world's population. Wow. The cabal has this plan to depopulate the earth. the Georgia Guidestones, that are out there, and they say they want to reduce the world's population to 500 million, from the 7 billion that we have. They wanted to do that through a nuclear war, is what they wanted to do. And the council said no way, but still you can come back that there were some of the council members, a very small minority, were in favor of that. So you can see you can have this council that is very dysfunctional. Now, in that you have administrative leaders, and the Red Dragon is actually a code name of an individual, and he is the head of the Chinese line, and he is also one of the top administrators of the family. You have basically the council, which would be like a legislature, and then you have 3 administrators, which would be like the administration. And he's one of those, of the top administrators, he and his cousin. And those were the 2 that I sat down and had dinner with in December of 2014, a year and a month ago. And I was told that we were sitting down and having dinner, and we did this in Hong Kong. And I'm sitting there across the table from these 2 gentlemen, and you would never know who they are. They can walk and move amongst all the regular people throughout Hong Kong and China. They always have guards around them, but you never see them. You never see their security guards around them. But they blend in. That's why they never make themselves be public. They never allow their name to get out, and people never know who they are, so they can function in the everyday world. But when we sat down there and I came back home, and the ambassador said, when you sat down, and then Charlotte Anderson was the name of the lady, that she was my girlfriend at the time, and she was with me. And he said, when you and Charlotte sat down and had dinner with the Red Dragon and the other senior elder, it's good for you to know that you were the first one of everyday, regular, common people that has ever met with him. Because they have been living in isolation and security and behind the scenes for literally decades. And he is just starting himself to come out into the open and to communicate with what you'd call common people. Most of his communications was always only with world leaders. And that's understanding how governments run and control their finances. See, all the governments in the world are run financially as corporations, and they all have a debtor-creditor relationship with the family. And they all get their money for their operational expenses from the family. That's the unknown issue that a lot of people misunderstand, that we think when we pay our taxes to the United States that the IRS collects it and gives it to the U.S. Treasury. No, they don't. The money goes to the Federal Reserve to pay off the debt that the U.S. Treasury has to the Federal Reserve. And that money makes its way through the various cabal channels. And so the U.S. government doesn't get its money to pay for its infrastructure needs from our taxes. It gets it from the family. And the family releases it. And those are the various types, what they call the banking screens, that are out there in the family's financial system, is what it is. So, yeah.
I have a question.
Sure.
I can introduce. Remember where you are. Make a note.
Yeah.
The United States has been basically the world leader. And it seems like with what you're saying that China should be it. So obviously they're allowing the United States to take this role.
Yes.
What is the plan behind that? From what I've observed, is they keep changing the seat of power. We have it in Rome and Babylon and up through England, and then we have the Revolution, and et cetera, et cetera. So apparently the seat of the illusion power, the bully, we're now the Romans, right? We're now the Klingons, right? Is the United States. Have you uncovered what that is about?
Yes.
They keep doing that?
Is because because the family represents royal bloodlines from around the world. But remember, the United States doesn't have its own royal bloodline. It comes out underneath the British. You see, so it would be included as a part of the European system. The United States would. But over the history, there are different countries that are allowed to be what is called the dominant controller for a tenure, for a season. Now, let me go back to the family and the council. These council of 14 elders serve a term of 70 years, 70 years. They start when they're around 50 or 60 years old, and right now, in fact, they are in the process right now of making their transition, where the old council is going out and the new one is going to come in that's going to serve for the next 70 years. And so these elders, by the time they're done, they're between 110 and 135 years old. They're all very senior. And so you still have some of these guys that are 130 years old and they're still caught in the old paradigm of life from 50 and 60 and 80 years ago. They haven't changed, and they don't change, and they don't feel a need to change. And that's why you see some of the old cabal and Illuminati influence on the outgoing council. Now, I don't know who is the new council. I have no idea. I have not met with them. I have not talked with any of them. I don't have any contact with those, so I can't answer any questions around that. But along with that, a country is allowed to become what is called the dominant ruling country for a period of about 60 to 70 years. The United States has been the controlling country since right after World War II, and our term is ending. And you look back, who was it prior to that? It was Great Britain. That was in the era when said, the sun never sets on the British flag because of all the colonies that they had all around the world. And you notice right after World War II, all of that started falling apart. So Great Britain's power and control over the world kind of fizzled out. And who had it prior to Great Britain? It was France. And who had it prior? I don't know exactly these timelines, but France had an era, Spain had an era, and you see this moving through this process. Well, now it's moving to China. The next 60 to 70 years is going to be China's era of time, where they are going to become the dominant one. And the United States is phasing out because, see, the family will not allow any one group to have a dominance and control over a long, long period of time. Because the bottom line is, the reality is, all of the political systems in the United States and Europe, they're all puppets. They're puppets to the cabal. Now, what is the cabal's relationship to the family? When I had dinner there with the Red Dragon, we were in a conversation, and I asked him, it says, if the family rules the world, then where does the cabal fit into this? And he said, pull out your American $1 bill and let me explain how we view the pyramid in the eye on the back. He says the pyramid represents the different levels of financial power here on the planet. At the very bottom, obviously, would be those that are in slaves or in utter poverty. And as you work your way up through the system, at the very top of the pyramid would be the most powerful bankers, money controllers here on the planet. And then above that, you have the eye. And the eye are the 13 Illuminati families that run everything below it. And then he said, the family, they're above the eye. We are above the eye. And he says the family, it says the cabal, those 13 Illuminati families, they're our slaves. They will bow to us and do what we tell them to do. But here's what's significant. The family believes that they have, through what they call a divine decree, that they cannot interfere and interrupt the free will of the human race. So they cannot micromanage what the cabal does. They can periodically step in. They can periodically influence shifts and controls for the larger picture, the good of the larger picture, but they cannot micromanage anything of what the cabal is doing, because that's a part of the human race's evolutionary and growth and spiritual process moving into their own enlightenment. Because, see, we have a tendency to look at the cabal and paint them as evil. And Janet and Sasha, you've put me in touch with Michael Lee Hill, and I've been listening to his last couple radio programs. And even as he describes it, the Anunnaki know that they are just playing a role, and some of them are playing good cop, bad cop roles. And the bad cop would be the reflection of the cabal and the Illuminati. But all they're really doing is reflecting our own darkness back to ourselves to heighten and let us go on a fast track process through our own growth and development. So all of this all of this evil that we see out there and we experience is just a reflection of our own duality consciousness. And what I would call the more enlightened members of the family, they know that. And so they have to let the cabal do what they're doing, because all they're doing is reflecting back to us our own darkness to help us in our own growth on a fast track pace. And Michael Lee Hill explains that very, very well in a recent radio program that he had on Fade to Black, if people want to listen to that. He does a very good job of reflecting and describing the role of the Anunnaki. And that's where you come in, because see, it was the Anunnaki that put into place the dragon family to be the rulers over the humans here on the earth. But then you would also understand the Anunnaki does not micromanage the dragon family, and the dragon family does not micromanage the cabal. They have to let them be. And we as humans have our...
Anunnaki involved the dragon family in your illustration of your...
No. Remember what the red dragon said? The Anunnaki, it says the cabal, the Illuminati, are slaves to the Anunnaki. I mean, to the family, not the red dragon family, the whole family overall. Janet, on your website, you have the family crest, and it's interesting. Right. Even when you look at the family crest, you have this red background. You got the phoenix bird, but inside the phoenix bird are a couple symbols that are really interesting. Inside the chest of the phoenix bird on the family's crest, you see the wreath. What is that? That's the symbol of the United Nations. Mm-hmm. And it's symbolic of the fact that the dragon family, if they feel that they get what is called divine guidance, they can step in and use the United Nations to make a shift for humanity if they get divine guidance to do that. And also on the inside of that wreath is a pentagon. And this is how it's been explained to me, is the family has the right to use the United States military for what they feel that there is appropriate times of divine guidance to do certain things. But they will not micromanage the daily affairs of the United States military. But they are available if they need them, because both the Pentagon and the United Nations knows it's the family that really runs and controls what goes on. But it's all done in what is called a shadow world. And where the people... The everyday people who are asleep in this world don't understand that. But as we wake up and we move into our own awakening process and our own growth process, we really begin to see that the world is not what we always thought it was. There are still rulers and controllers behind the scenes, but these rulers and controllers are helping us in our own evolutionary process. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I have a lot of questions.
Okay.
I'm asking questions mainly to help clarify things for our listeners, and to just bring things because you're going through a lot of information quite rapidly, and some people that may not have been exposed to this may not be tracking
Absolutely.
it.
And this is and I think I've pretty much covered most of the background and the history of who the family is, what their role is, how they control the money and the amount of gold that is out there, and what is the Illuminati and what is the cabal and how the Anunnaki, how it all fits into place. I think I've kind of covered most of that, so this would be a good time for us just to go on with questions. Yeah.
We're going to take in 3 minutes, but go ahead, Sal.
Dave, how can you verify that those pictures that you saw were pictures of actual gold, and how can you verify that?
Well, part of it, there's a lot more pictures that I haven't shared with you, that the ambassador has shared with me. And he describes also some of the places where some of this gold is. Now, this gold is spread throughout various places throughout all of Asia, in various caves and bunkers and in different locations. My understanding, there's around 15 to 20 of these locations spread throughout Asia. They're very secretive. They're very hard to get to. Not anybody can get into them. If anybody tries to break into them, they would probably be dead within 10 seconds of when they're on the inside. Because if you don't get clearance to go through the appropriate multiple step measures to get inside, as soon as you open the door, cyanide poisoning goes off, and you'll be dead within a minute through the cyanide poisoning. And so it's all protected. It's very, very well protected. Well, there are keepers that are assigned, and these keepers are custodians. I had the privilege to have a Skype communication with a keeper in another part of the world in Asia. I'm not going to give out the location to protect her identity. She is actually a member of the family. She is a princess. I have talked with her on Skype. I've seen her face-to-face on Skype. We carried on extensive conversations, and then I saw pictures of her in these caves, in these bunkers, with gold beyond your comprehension, with diamonds that are so large you can't even begin to comprehend at its value. And there's absolutely no reason for me to believe that these pictures are photoshopped. And then the ambassador himself, on 2 of my trips to China, was going to take me into, there is one location I can tell you, because he has made it public. The largest gold depository in the world is underneath the airport in Hong Kong. Now, he has showed me, I've shared that picture with you. I've shared that picture publicly on my website. I've shared that with the people in my workshops. And the ambassador has given me permission to share that location because it's the most secure location in the world. Mm-hmm. And you look at these pictures, and these are pictures of gold bars stacked up in pallets almost 5 feet high. And what he has explained to me, that one picture is the size of larger than a soccer field, and there's 4 of those underneath the airport in Hong Kong. And twice he was going to take me in there.
Okay.
Radio at freedomslips.com. We'll be right back after this message.
Tune in Tuesdays at 12 noon Eastern on Studio A to hear Tammy Adams share her knowledge of an unknown realm on Talking with Your Angels. Join Tammy as she uncovers hidden secrets about the spiritual world of angels, ghosts, and other entities that have been with us longer than we know. Tammy is a psychic, a teacher, spiritual coach, a leader in her field, and will be sharing her information and stories with you. So join us on Tuesdays at noon on Studio A. With Tammy's guidance, you'll find out who has been watching over you from the other side, and soon you will be talking with your angels.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and FreedomSlips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, FreedomSlips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Aloha, and welcome back to the Sacred Matrix on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. And I'm your host, Janet Kira Lesson, with my co-host, Dr. Sasha Lesson. And we have a very special guest, Dave Schmidt, and we're talking about the dragon family, especially the red dragon family. Now, before we get back to our show, I want to remind everybody to please go over to the donation button on freedomslips.com and make your donation. $10, $15, 20, whatever you can donate this week is greatly appreciated, and we do thank you very much for your donation, because your donations allow Revolution Radio to bring you shows like ours with my wonderful Dr. Lesson, husband beloved, and myself, as well as all the other special programs and other hosts on Studio A and B on Revolution Radio. So thank you very much. So, Dr. Lesson, what would you like to say?
Well, I'm hoping in this section of the program that we can see what can be done by ordinary people to deal with this financial enslavement that has been perpetrated upon us.
Yeah.
Yes, I have.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead and answer Dr. Lesson's question, and then when you're done, let me know. I have a couple other questions.
Yeah, let me lead up to that. But just before the break, I had said that the ambassador was going to take me into where all this gold is under the airport in Hong Kong, and It's interesting what came out of that. The first time was the trip that was in December, in 2014, 13 months ago, and he was supposed to. He does not live in Asia. He lives in another part of the world, and he was supposed to come and meet us there. 4 times he tried to get on the flight. He would show up at the airport, and they would told him, "Your ticket's canceled. We can't let you on this flight." And 3 times that happened. Then finally, the 4th time, he was able to get on a plane, went to another city to change flights, and they canceled him. It was like there was this definite intervention that they were not going to let him get on an airplane to come to Hong Kong and show me the gold. Well, the last time was May of last year, and he actually did. I'm sorry, Janet, go ahead. Yeah.
I just wanted to say I find that humorous. With all this money, he's flying commercial flights, and he's not in his private jet.
They cannot fly private jets. If they fly private jets, you have to file a flight plan, and they'd be shot down in a heartbeat. They have to fly commercial for their own protection. They will look at seats and flights. He always has his bags packed and ready to go on a moment's notice, because staff has done research about what flight would be safe. They look at all the people and the names that are on those flights, and they'll say, what plane is it safe for him to get to be on that won't be shot down? You see. Yeah. Now, let me give that illustration. In May, I did my 3rd trip to China, and he did come to Hong Kong, and he came in, he gets out of his cab at the hotel, we greet him, he goes up, changes clothes, comes down, and we're in a business meeting with some various people. A half hour later, I am sitting beside him in the business meeting, and he starts to have a heart attack. And we rushed him off to the hospital. He was in the hospital 3 nights. They stabilized him, got him taken care of. That kind of canceled the ability of me being able him to take me in, because that was 3 days of the schedule that got wiped out. He goes back to his home country. I can say he lives in Europe. That's all that I can say. But he goes back to his home country and in Europe, and they put him through extensive tests for 1 month to find out what was the reason for the heart attack. What they came down to was, just before he left, he visited his doctor to get some of his medications renewed. The doctor he went in to see was not his normal doctor. The doctor gave him a prescription. When they did all the testing, they found out it was the prescription that created the heart attack, and they tried to find that doctor, and the guy was nowhere to be found. It was an assassination attempt on his life when he came to Hong Kong. He's had 2 assassination attempts on his life. So that's the type of world, that he lives in. And there's obviously that people that don't like what I have to say, and they don't like me talking about that. I've been told I've got CIA people that absolutely hate me with a passion. But I just know also that I'm protected, and I'm divinely protected. I know most people that step into this type of a situation, they don't live very long, but I just know I'm on a divine assignment. I'm divinely protected. And, it was even just yesterday, again, I got confirmation on that. I live in Sedona, Arizona. I'm about 2 hours away from Phoenix. I went down to a meeting there yesterday, and there's this one lady that has wonderful metaphysical giftedness. And we were in a conversation, and I'm telling her a little bit about what's going on, and she just says, you just need to know that right now I am seeing right beside you these 2 Palladians that are your bodyguards. They are with you all the time, everywhere you go. I've had multiple people tell me that I've got these 10-foot tall Palladians that are always with me all the time, and they are protecting me. So that, all I can say is I have no fear in what I do. None whatsoever. I know I'm on a divine assignment to tell this story. Now, so the question is, how does this come back to humanity? And how does humanity get set free from these centuries, if not millennia, of financial slavery? And Sasha and Janet, that's where I think my visits with you helped fill that story, is because I was able in my time with you to see what I call the full picture. And we both had admitted when we were on my radio program that we kind of became the missing links to each other's story. What you have said, and also again is what Michael Lee Hill says on his radio program, is the Anunnaki have returned to Earth. They have returned after the 2012 shift, the shift of the ages. And Enki is the good guy. He's the white hat of the Anunnaki, and he has come back to fix up the mess that has been created through the hundreds of years, if not over a couple thousand years. And they have come back to give leadership and guidance to basically phasing out the cabal and the Illuminati and their power and their control, restoring the earth to its rightful place. And what that also means is that we as a humanity are going to be starting to be set free from our financial slavery. And that's where all this gold comes in. Because this gold that the family has is not just the gold that they have accumulated through hundreds of years of trade, and through bringing the gold of what is called the gold out of Solomon's temple, and bringing the gold that had come out of Egypt and out of, Central America with, the Incas and the Aztecs that were there. That's not just that gold. My understanding is also a lot of the gold that was left over from the Anunnaki mining. And this gold is beyond comprehension. I once asked the ambassador, what is the value of all this gold? And he explained to me what was called their banking systems on the bank screens. Now, these are not public banks. These are not countries' banks. These are not financial institutions. It's their internal record-keeping of financial organization. And he described the 4 different colors of the screens. And when you start at the bottom, the white screen is the value of every dollar in every bank account on this planet. And then when you go up next, you have what is called the blue screens, and that's the value of all of the assets and the money of all of the countries, the sovereigns here on the planet. And then you have the gray screens. Now, but let me go up above that and describe the black screens. The black screens are the value of all the gold and the assets that the family has, and it operates as an endowment. They never touch any of that. And it's the interest that comes off the black screens that is moved to the gray screens that is then distributed to the nations. And then out of the nation's financial activity is where the white screens come into existence of all the bank accounts around the world. And I asked him, says, what's the value of the black screens? And he said, try 80 zeros with the 1 in front of it.
Wow.
Try to comprehend that value. And he said, and that's not all of it. That's only part of it. So you see, it's not that the money isn't out there. The money is out there. There's an unlimited supply of it. But it's about what you have described in your books. It's about what Michael Lee Hill has talked about because of Enki returning. And we know Enki is, the chief Anunnaki. As we have moved into this Aquarian age, it is the age of Enki. So Enki, as we know, and as Michael Lee Hill has described it, it is not his name. It's actually a title. It means Lord of the Earth. So he has come back to help us and to help us clean up the mess and to restore financial stability to the world. And because he knows that from the grassroots up, if the people are going to be set free, we're still going to be using money for a long time because that's a part of our thought system and our process. So what's going to happen is there are funds that are going to be collateralized by this gold that is going to be slowly released.
I have a quick question here.
Sure.
And then we'll get to that. If this 80 zeros with a 1 in front of it was actually out in the world, money would become useless, right?
Absolutely. It would.
Yeah. So
you see,
that's part of why I'm pulling it.
See, it's not about the money. It's about us as a human race working through and undoing what is called our duality consciousness. Because duality consciousness is what creates conflict, warring, power, domination, control, manipulation, degradation of the planet, one-upsmanship over another. All of that comes out of what is called duality consciousness. And all of us that are here on this planet, and it doesn't make any difference if it's humans or ETs or aliens, we are all in the larger scale of what the omniverse is. We are in the process of moving from duality consciousness to a consciousness of oneness. And in the consciousness of oneness is where everything is one. And there's nothing but love. There's nothing but perfection. That's where God consciousness is at. And if they released all this money into a world of duality consciousness, of power and control and one-upsmanship, we would only empower them more than ever before. And they haven't gone through their shift and change of how to heal the duality mind. To me, it comes back to the teachings of A Course in Miracles, where it says we all have two minds. We have what is called the duality mind, and we have the divine mind. And inside of all of us is the divine mind, the oneness of God, and all the power and the love of God. But the duality consciousness mind is the default thinking system, the default thought system here on the planet Earth. Not only on Earth, but in all of the other planets and galaxies as well. And you have to heal that duality consciousness mind. And what we call it, it's healing the ego mind, to where you come into the divine mind. And as we come more and more in through our own evolutionary process of moving from duality consciousness to what is called non-dualism consciousness, then we're ready to live in harmony and peace with each other. And that's when this money is ready to be released. And they're recognizing that we are now moving into the Aquarian age, which ironically is also called the Golden Age. And all this gold is going to be used as the collateral to be released under the human race. But don't expect it to happen overnight. And I can say let me say this one thing. If you're listening to this, and if you think it's about you getting rich, you're wrong. That is not what the release of this money is about. If you went out there and you bought 10 million dinar thinking that you're going to get rich, you're out to lunch, folks. This money is about being released to people who are ready to shift and change and heal this planet. Using it from the grassroots up, where people get to step into what is called their heart passions, their heart desires, their love for humanity and their love for this planet, and then to use it as a vehicle to heal. Now, will that be an absolutely perfect process? No, it will not. Because some people are going to get money and they're going to fall back into their own greed. Yes, there will be some of that. There will be some of what you would call the lottery mentality. They'll go out and they'll get $1 million and they'll blow it, and 2 years later they'll be more in debt than what they were before. But the masses of those that are going to receive this money have a heart and passion. And that's why it's happening and being released very quietly and very slowly. Okay, that's that part of it. So.
Okay, Sasha has a question.
Well, yeah. It's more, from the perspective, from my perspective, in a way, duality has to be part of oneness, and exactly what Marduk and Supreman and others have been, and Michael Hill have been saying, is that the existence of the challenges of the separateness, the sense of me versus not me, is essential to really getting a higher organization of the of all your potentials. In any human impulse, acquisitiveness or greed, for example, it becomes deleterious when it's overblown, but enough of the acquisitiveness needs to be there, tempered by generosity, so that you can center yourself and embrace both. So it's a philosophical thing in a way, and I think we need to be careful not to be dualistic in our rejection of duality. It's also interesting that the Chancellor of the Exchequer now, for all the Nibiruan systems is Yahweh. Enlil got the portfolio of finance, and he's in charge of the gold of Nibiru and the lots of gold that's stashed on Mars.
And then I just wanted to go back to you, Dave, is that the whole duality system is like the operating system of our universe, and so we needed this play upon the stage upon which to interact and create and co-create as divine co-creators with Source. Yeah. And now we're shifting from, let's say, Windows to something that's a better, I want to say Macintosh, but something even better than that. And because we wouldn't have our society and what we have, and there are wonderful things that come out of this. There's music, song, dance, art, all these wonderful people that come and live lives, and we honor them as they pass through, and we remember them in our history, and that none of that would have existed if it wasn't for this current system of duality. So as we shift from this to another system, I'd like to honor and respect all that has come before, because we see far, because we stand upon the shoulders of giants, our ancestors who have come before and laid the groundwork for where we are going.
Yeah, it's not a perfect system. It's going to have its ebbs and flows, and there's going to be some that are going to do well and some are not, because that's just part of being human and living on this planet. But in the larger picture, it is unfolding, because we're going through our shift and change, and we're moving into the new age, and we're moving into this golden age, and it's time for us as a human race to grow into that. So on a longer term basis, I think we're going to see this stuff unfolding for about 15 to 20 years. On a short-term basis, ask me why I am involved in this. I have no answer other than it's a divine assignment. It found me. Am I getting to be involved in the very, very early first steps of it? Yes, but I cannot say anything else other than that, because I have been put into a blackout of how much I can talk about this. So I can't say anything other than that, other than this. Do not send me any emails asking me about anything of the dinar or the Vietnamese dong. What are the rates and what are the dates and how are you going to get it? If you send me an email asking those questions, I will not answer it. But I can say this. If you want to stay in touch, then go to my website, thesedonaconnection.com, and sign up to be on my newsletter list. There is a sign-up form, an automated form in the right-hand column of my website, and when I am given permission to release information, I'll do that. I have no control at all or over anything of any of these exchanges. They are not mine. I don't control who gets to be on the list and who does not. I am just a messenger. But I am allowed to bring some people in. Now, don't ask me about favoritism. Don't ask me about why you and why not me. I cannot answer those questions. I will not answer those questions. And I am under very, very strict control with that, to the point that if I violate that, I can be in serious trouble. And I'm very serious about what I just said, folks, for those of you that are listening. Do not send me any emails asking any of those questions. I will not answer them. But when I am released...
You know that just because you said do not.
I know that. I know that. And I know they will, and I'm just going to delete those emails, okay?
Delete them.
I'll just delete them, and I will not answer them. And I will not answer anything you're going to say on my YouTube pages. I don't answer anything there. But get on my newsletter list. That's going to keep you abreast and keep you posted what's going on. And if you want to be a part of this, when I am released to open it up, then you will have that opportunity. Because, it's interesting, Sasha and Janet, people don't know about me. They don't hear about me because I have never promoted myself. My newsletter list is about 10,000. I just passed a couple months ago the 1 million view mark on my YouTube channel, about 1 million views. That came in just a little over 2 years, and it's all been by word of mouth. I think I've only been on one other very, very small radio program. This is the first radio program I've ever been interviewed on.
I heard you give hints in your seminars. You give people hints.
I do give workshops. I do these workshops. I do 28. I've done 28 of them over the last almost 2 years because, see, I can say things verbally at the workshops that I cannot say that will appear on the internet. Because once it's on the internet, believe me, there are people out there that hate me with a passion. And these are very strong, powerful people. And if I put stuff out on the internet, they will take it, they will shift it, they will malign it, they will lie about it, they will cheat about it, and they will demonstratize me, and they will attack me. And then for you, it becomes working against your best interest. So that is why there's just some things I cannot state on the internet. But when I am in, and that's why I talk about my workshops, that you want to show up, folks. Because people it's not a requirement for you to attend, but I can say things there of how to get on these lists that I cannot say on the internet. That's the bottom line. And I better not talk anymore about that because I'm going to get myself in trouble if I do. I do have a workshop coming up in Maui on February 20th. I did 8 of them between Labor Day and the first week in December. And then I just did one 2 weeks ago here in my hometown in Sedona. I'm kind of backing off a little bit because I'm going to be extremely busy. I'm supposed to be writing a book about telling the story. That's my job, is to tell the story.
I was just you writing a book. So
yes, I am.
First of all, I want to say I heard of you before you called us, and I went, wow, there's Dave Schmidt with the Red Dragon Ambassador. So for some reason, my word of mouth, you came, and you heard of us before you came here. So that was very interesting that we heard of each other before. So we must have some pretty good marketing going on there somewhere.
But for me, it's been predominantly word of mouth, but I keep getting told by various sources that, you're about ready to take a leap out there into the public. And so I have to be ready for it. I have a book that I'm supposed to write to get that out. And when I get that done, then I'll start back up, into the workshops again. Yes. And if I am able to release anything through my newsletter, I will do that. But the most important thing for you is that if you want to be, and as I said, please don't ask me any questions about anything of the exchange of the dinar and the dong. I'm just not going to answer those questions on the internet. I cannot. Okay. But
so your book is, do you have a working title, and when do you expect it to be out?
I have a working title, but I don't know if I'm ready to release that yet. Okay. I think I shared it with you when I was in your home, and I've kind of been told no, don't let that title out yet, because when I share it with people, they just laugh and they say that is a perfect title. It is going to capture attention. And so I would rather not, let it out publicly. But the subtitle is I'm basically saying, I'm talking about the shadow world of money, politics, and social affairs is what I'm doing. I'm basically bringing to the light the shadow world of that is out there, and what I learned in my years in politics and finances and being involved in, being a minister, and how social affairs are really run behind the scenes by shadow organizations. And what we see on the surface is not the way that it really is. And so part of it is talking about, what I've talked about here, the journey that I've been on, how I got into all of this, and what my experiences have been, and then how these systems are all shadow systems. I'll talk about my experience in politics in 20 years, and how the political system is a shadow system, how the financial system is a shadow system. And when I talk about social affairs, I go into the areas of entertainment, media, and religion, how they're all basically also shadow systems. So what we see is not what is real. And it's time to tell that story. Yeah, it's just time to tell that story. So, yeah.
So what's the Reader's Digest version, a précis of how government really functions? You were in state government. How did things really get?
Well, I talk about how we think that we have a democracy, but we do not have a functioning democracy at all. And that most people think that there's 435 members of Congress and they run and control the system, and that's not true. When you get between Congress and Senate and the President, there are 6 people that run and control. 6 of those, because those 6 have absolute veto power over almost anything. So nothing comes through unless those 6 approve of it. And 3 of them would be the Speaker of the House, the Majority Leader in the House, and the Appropriations Chairman in the House. In the Senate, it's the Senate Majority Leader and the Finance or Appropriations Chairman there, because, see, almost anything that's going to make any shift and change is going to require money. A money expenditure. So that means the finance money chairmen of the committees have to approve it. If it doesn't get through the Finance Committee, dead on arrival. If it doesn't have the majority leader's approval to come to the floor to be voted on, dead on arrival. And then the other one is the president. The president has veto power. So we think that we have this democracy of 535 elected officials and the president, but really only 6 of them run it. And they are run and controlled by the power of money. Money controls them. I'll tell the story of elections that would shock you, and it was very obvious it was the power of money. We just had an example a couple of years ago where the majority leader in the House of Representatives was defeated in a primary election in his home district by a totally unknown guy. And to me, it was so obvious that was a setup and controlled by money, because it was obvious to me that the majority leader did not play ball with the cabal Illuminati, and they got rid of him. And they used their power and control. They can fix. They can fix elections and buy elections and control the computer systems on elections to get rid of you if they don't want you. Because, see, they know of the 535 members in Congress, they know they only have to deal with those 5. They don't have to worry about the other 530. The other 530 are just seat fillers. That's all that they are. You control those 5. You manipulate those 5. You dominate them with your money, and you use mind control mechanisms over them. And believe me, you've got professional, what I call NSA, Black Ops CIA, people who are professionals at mind control that are constantly beaming into their minds to control their thoughts. And that's why we have an inept, ineffective Congress and president that can't get anything done, because they're controlled and they're manipulated through the power of what I call esoteric power and influence and the power of money. That's the real political system in America.
Well, I have a question.
That's the shadow political system in America that the public does not understand. And believe me, I was in it for 20 years, and I saw it and I experienced it.
Well, there's a thing that's coming to play. I actually saw it at the Laughlin UFO conference, and what's his name? Steve Bassett told that Podesta was going to, Hillary was going to come out and say she's going to investigate Area 51 and the alien presence on the planet. And I saw Steve Bassett do that exact presentation in November, and here we are. Hillary's announcing that, and there's all these YouTubes and websites talking about that. What is the rule of disclosure in your scenario here?
Well, I think it's not number one, it's nice to say that they're going to do it, but number 2, those people will not be the decision makers of when disclosure happens. They are puppets. And if you really want to understand disclosure, then listen to Michael Lee Hill's other radio program on Fade to Black. He says behind the scenes there are controllers that release anything about UFO activity. Nothing gets out into the media without their permission. And here's the main reason why. And they're doing this in our best interest. Now, people who listen to this radio program, we're all fine about disclosure. We're saying, bring it on, bring it on. But here's what they'll say. If you release disclosure to the 7 billion people on this planet, and they realize, oh, okay, there are aliens and ETs out there, and they have these spaceships where they move across the galaxy faster than the speed of light. The next question is, well, what are their propulsion systems, their energy systems that allow them to do that? And then when you ask that question and you answer that question, it leads to the whole concept of free energy. Free energy that is available to every single individual on this planet. And then that leads to, what would an organization like ISIS be if they had free energy? You think about power and control and terrorism and warring and killing. If they had free energy, they don't need oil anymore. They don't need money anymore. If they had free energy, they could develop weapons systems that would blow us all off the planet. That's why we have not had disclosure yet. It's for our own safety and protection. Because until those type of organizations are curtailed, we're not going to see full disclosure until they're under control. Now, I think we're well on that way to getting there. I really do think that we are. I think we're going to see them in the next year or two. We're going to see ISIS under control, and we're going to see most of the terrorist organizations under control.
Well, that all seems to be orchestrated anyway.
It is.
It just seems to be artificial enemies to power the war machine mechanisms, and it's really, I look at that and I say bull crap, a bunch of bull crap.
Well, I think it's back to what Michael Lee Hill had to say about bad cop, good cop, and the bad cops are phasing out. The Illuminati are phasing out. The cabal is phasing out. Their power and control of money is phasing out. When you look at the economic structure, the current financial system in the world is run and controlled by the cabal. But the BRICS countries have stepped up and are now providing an alternative that will phase in to being under control by good white hats people while the cabal system fades away. And I think we are really close to that right now because of what's happening in our financial markets. Because see, they had to...
Of the show, and you were talking about that there's something going to happen, real soon here, like a collapse. And I was going to ask, what does that look like? Is it going to be like the collapse of 2008, or is it going to be like the 1930s? And maybe you want to elaborate a little bit more on that, or how it ties into what you're talking about right at this moment. Go ahead.
Well, I can give you my opinion as I see it now, but the problem with is that it can shift and change because there's so many variables on it. I thought a lot of signs were pointing that we would have had this collapse back in September, October. It didn't happen because the cabal just kept kicking, the can down the road. But I think we need to, the current system has to somewhat fail and create what I call a crisis scenario to give the leaders cover to bring in something new. And because the United States doesn't have the petrodollars anymore, and because they can't run up their debt, and because they can't go out and borrow money, when the current markets drop, that's going to give them the ability to say, well, this system doesn't work anymore. We don't have the petrodollar anymore. I guess we better go back to asset-backed currencies. That means we're going to have gold-backed currencies. That's what J. Edward Griffin in his book, the history of the Federal Reserve says is that is the best economic system. When you find that countries are under what are asset-backed currencies, they have the most stable economies, their economies are the strongest, finances at the strongest, and you don't go through your huge ups and downs of financial calamities. See, the ups and downs of the financial calamities are designed by the cabal for their elite power and control and to keep us in slavery. The freedom to slavery financially for the whole planet is to get under asset-backed currencies, and that's what we're on our way to do. And we might be...
have them? Do any countries have asset-backed currencies at this time?
Do we have any assets to back our currency?
Only one or two. There's only 3 major countries on the planet that do not have a central bank controlled, what you call a Rothschild controlled central bank, similar to our Federal Reserve. And ironically, guess who those 3 countries are?
Who?
Iran, North Korea, and Cuba, who President George W. Bush said were the 3 axis of evil.
Wow.
They are the only 3 major countries on the planet that don't have central bank run controlled financial systems. And when countries have this creditor-debtor relationship with the family, there's only one country on this planet that is paying its interest back to the family. And guess what country that is? Iran. So why is Iran this horrible, villainized country that the United States keeps, promoting as this absolute demon out there? Is because the media is controlled by the cabal, because they hate Iran, because they thumb their nose at the Rothschild banking system that runs the world's money supply. They've stood up to them. I applaud them for that. They have the courage to stand up to them and say no more. But you can see it's shifting and changing because it's just been in the news this week that the United States has withdrawn all of its sanctions on Iran. We're now in diplomatic relations with Iran. We're now going to start trading with Iran. What does that tell you? The old system's falling away. It's falling apart. We've gone back to normalized relations now with Cuba. We can now start traveling to Cuba. We are now in trading relations with Cuba. That tells you the old cabal financial system is falling apart. They know that, and they're slowly, what I call, backing out to save face, and the new system is coming in. But it's a shift that happens over a period of months and a few years. It doesn't happen, at a snap of a finger overnight. The old system phases out and the new one comes in. What's that?
When this new system comes into place, you've got so many people right now. It's obvious that our current system isn't working because so many. Let's just look at the United States. So many people are struggling. They're in poverty. They're homeless. It's obvious that we need to have something. It's cheaper to house the homeless than to take them to the hospital. Or I just talked to my sister. There was a homeless guy. It's like, what do you do? Well, they're going to put him in jail because it's freezing in Pennsylvania, or else he's going to die. So there's got to be a cheaper way. It's cheaper to house them than just have them in the street where, excuse me. Go ahead.
No, I agree, and it's an old paradigm that is fading away and a new one that is coming in. What we have still is a United States Congress that spends hundreds and billions of dollars annually on the war machine. And as that war machine fades out, that money will become available for us, we the people. And I think, and part of that again is the shift in consciousness of the people, and the people are beginning to step up and to realize what's happening. I think the people are getting tired of the excuse that we've been in Afghanistan for 10 years spending over $1 trillion when the only reason we went in there was to get rid of Osama bin Laden. That was the only reason we went into Afghanistan over 10 years ago, and we're still there spending over $1 trillion. And what could that $1 trillion do to the American people? You see, when the American people begin to wake up and tell their members of Congress no more, that's when we're really going to see our shift and change. And politically, because I worked on political campaigns for 20 years, I understand what really drives campaigns. And I am seeing the signs of it this year. The people are starting to wake up saying, we're sick and tired of an inept political leadership that will not shift and change. They cater to the power of the money and the corporations and the war machine, and we're tired of it. We want that money back to take care of us. It's our money. And I think we may see a huge shift in Congress this year. I think you're going to see a lot of incumbents in what you call swing districts that are going to be gone. I think we're beginning to see signs that people are going to say, I don't give a damn if you're Republican or Democrat. I'm willing to shift and change. I'm just voting the incumbent out, even though it's a person of my own party. Because, we've always run into this problem where people say Congress is corrupt and evil and inept, but yet 95% of the time the people re-elect their own incumbent. That has to stop. And I think we're beginning to see signs of it this year. And as I said, I've been around political campaigns now for almost 30 years, and I haven't seen a year like this in the last 30 years. What I call the public sentiment. It's starting to change. And that's a very, very good start.
I think the internet has really made it perfectly apparent to people. At first, it took several years of preparation before the CIA moved into Afghanistan to protect the opium crop, which they used to destabilize the Ghettos and to finance their murderous programs. And I think disclosure is ultimately going to also lead to looking at the false flag attack on the Twin Towers and the Kennedy assassination, and how the Illuminati, the cabal, has created all this horrible conditions here. Well, Americans who joined Facebook know, and most of the world knows what's going on. And I think that we are part of that process, Dave. And I think that your contributions about how they manipulate the money and what to do about it are huge. And I really want to thank you.
Well, it's back to it's not just the American people, but I would say it's the people in the Western world. So that would be basically the G7 countries world, is that when they begin to wake up that their government and the systems that they have trusted in for so long are corrupt and they're shadows of what really is out there. And when you look at it's the systems that we have traditionally put the most trust in. See, we wanted to trust our government to help us and to lead us and make things good for us, and we're realizing that is a shadow system there's a shadow system behind it of greed and corruption that runs it. It's the same way in the finance industry. It's the same way in the medical industry. It's the same way in the education industry. It's the same way in the entertainment and the media industry. They're run by shadow controllers behind the scenes. We've trusted these institutions for literally decades, and we're now starting to wake up is that they're all corrupt and run by shadow organizations, and we can't trust them anymore. And that is a positive step, because when the people wake up and realize I can't trust these institutions that I always thought I could trust, what am I to do? I'm to take control of myself. And when we begin to take control of ourselves and begin to wake up and express our voices, that's what I call the rising of the collective consciousness that shifts and gives the energy to shift and change. Revolutions always start from the grassroots up. They always do. They start from the grassroots when the grassroots people say enough is enough. And I think we're really close to being there now.
So how do you see this, after the reevaluation, what do you see it looking like for humanity? How will it be better for all of us, not just those at the top? We're talking about the basic needs, minimum income or economy, some basic standard for everybody alive. Just like Alex Collier said, how is it that we have a planet where people didn't even ask to be born and we don't even meet their basic needs? So,
I think it's going to be a process that will come in over, I think, about 2 to 3 years, Janet. And what's going to happen is what I call spiritually awake people, and I don't want to put a title on what that means, are going to, overnight, they're going to be receiving $10, $15, and $20 million. And they are going to have access to ongoing funds to what I call is to, first of all, set them free, which means they are now free to quit their jobs if they want to. They don't have to worry about providing for their families. They will never have to worry about money again. And they will have so much excess money that they get to go out and pursue their heart's passions of fixing and healing this world. And there are millions and millions of people out there that are like that. And when you see that start as a spark, when all of a sudden there's 10 to 20,000 people that are quietly putting money here, putting money there, starting an organization here that's healing and fixing things, starting this business that's giving organic foods and basically giving healing alternatives to new alternative forms of healing, energetic-based healing, instead of this corrupt Western medical system that's about profit. They are set free and they can unshackle themselves from the power of the corporations. See, right now we're shackled to the corporations of our basic daily needs and supplies. And they will have the money to say, I don't need you, greedy, power, corrupt corporation anymore. I can set myself free from that. And when they're free on the inside, that then creates the energy and the passion of love to go out and change this world. Now, that will start, and when you've got about 10 to 15,000 people that are that will be receiving that in the first couple of months, that starts a ripple effect. It begins to wake people up, and they'll start to say, how can I be a part of this? I want to be a part of this. And it shifts people's concepts, their thought process, and their minds from what I call survival, I am a victim, to how I can just step in and be a giver and be a conduit of shift and change in our planet, of love and passion and healing, versus being in a survival mode. Because right now the reality is there are millions and millions of people out there that want to do that, but they're stuck in financial survival mode. And funds are going to be released to them to get out of that financial survival mode.
What about the things to also free humanity from, we just lost a bunch of people to cancer this week, like David Bowie and et cetera. What about the cures for diseases, including the cures of aging? Are the power elite going to allow these things out there? Are they going to allow us to start producing healthy food instead of GMO?
Can they stop us?
Can they stop us? I mean,
they can't. No, they won't be able to stop us, because the people will have enough money to function on their own and to pull the plug from their power and control. You see, they only have power and control over us because we are dependent upon their systems. We're dependent upon their food. We're dependent upon their banking systems. We've been dependent in the past upon their information that tells us what we can and can't do. We're dependent upon the World Health Organization that says cancer is out there. We're dependent upon the American Cancer Society that raises billions and billions of dollars every year to say fight cancer, when the cure for cancer has been out there for 30 years. And they can unplug from the American Cancer Society. They can unplug from the World Health Organization. They can unplug from the power of Monsanto. They can unplug from the power of Walmart. They can unplug from all of these greedy, powerful corporations that run these systems that we've been dependent upon, because it's all about money first, the good for people secondary. They can unplug from the corrupt political system, and they can tell the political leaders, I'm not listening to you anymore, because, see, they will have their own money to step in and do their own things, because the reality is money still speaks. The money will shift from the few, the greedy, powerful few, it will start shifting over to the masses. And believe me, here's what I absolutely believe will happen. The powerful greedy, when they see the shift, they are not going to want to be left on the outside. There you will find most of these, what I call the secondary type of cabal people, will shift in a heartbeat, because they'll see the handwriting on the wall. If I'm going to hold to the old system, they're going to come after me, and that I will be the evil in their eyes, and they will attack me, and they will have the money to start filing lawsuits against me and to put me in prison. You will find when this ball starts rolling, that momentum is going to become so powerful and so strong of the everyday people that have a love for humanity and have a love to heal this planet, and they will now have money in their hands, and that love is more important than the money of power and greed. That's what's coming our way. I believe that with everything in me.
Will we see massive arrests of these people that have basically perpetuated crimes against humanity and murdered millions and billions? They've orchestrated wars, and we've been all puppets in their games for centuries. Will we see mass arrests and perhaps expulsion to the outer planets like Mars colonies, etc., people have been talking about?
I don't think so. I think that's a dream. I don't think that's a practical, logistical reality, because if you want the master arrest, it still is coming from a consciousness of pain, and I am a victim, and I want to victimize you because you victimized me. That's what has to stop. What has to stop is, I am going to punish you, I am going to control you, you hurt me, you victimize me, I'm going to victimize you back. That's just back to the war consciousness on a different level.
What about novelty and non-participation on all levels, not just those with the money, but the average person? Novelty.
I think it comes back to we have to move into a consciousness of love, and we offer forgiveness when there is those that are willing to say, I'm willing to change. And we aren't going to go after, throw them into prison, because then we're just shifting gears. We're becoming the powerful warring controllers over them because they victimize us, therefore I want to victimize them. It's the victimization mentality that has to stop.
I think that the whole concept is not punishment, but protection, protecting the innocent.
Yes, and Janet, I agree with that, because there are some that are so addicted to their power and their control is that they will not shift and change. Here's what I learned from the Dragon family. They're very forgiving if you're willing to say, I made a mistake. They're very forgiving if you're willing to say, I made a mistake. And it's important, I think, for us, since the family is going to be the source of these funds for us, that we offer that to others. If they're willing to step up and say, I made a mistake, I screwed up, and they're willing to show us that they're willing to change, then I think we need to offer forgiveness. If they're not, then prosecute their ass, is what I say.
You know, I think it's really interesting. In a way, if we can, instead of just looking at as forgiving, we could perhaps say, how did I get them to do that? How am I part of a relationship in which I have chosen a relationship where I am being exploited? And so it's not just that they're doing it to you, that's dualism, but to realize that you have co-created this relationship. I mean, that's another way of looking at it. And I guess I also had a footnote about, you alluded to, we've known the cure for cancer for 30 years, and I'll bet the cure is hemp, marijuana.
Well, it's that, and it's in China. China has discovered that at the root of cancer, it is a fungus, and so they treat it as a fungus. And when people come into many of their hospitals and clinics, they treat it as a fungus. The cancer is cured, and the people never come back. And they don't.
Wow. How did
and they put because see, what is a fungus? A fungus is an abnormal growth. It's at its very basis of its root. It's an abnormal growth that comes from a fungus, which means that there are things that they are doing to their bodies. Like, number one, they're not getting enough oxygen, they don't have the right alkalinity, and all that kind of stuff that allows a fungus to survive and to thrive.
Oh.
See, a fungus thrives and survives in the right environment. You shift that environment and take that environment away, and the fungus will die out. The cancer dies out. And that's what they've discovered in China.
You kill the fungus.
Kill the fungus. You kill the fungus, you no longer give the cancer the opportunity to continue to grow and spread. You put it in remission and it goes away. What's that?
Contagious? Is cancer contagious or is it self-contained?
I don't know. I don't have an answer on that, Janet, so I don't know.
Okay, that's fine.
I don't know the answer
we
on that.
have 5 minutes left.
Yeah, and I'm relaying that back to what the ambassador has told me about the medical institutions in China, in touch with the Red Dragon family in China, and that they have that. Let me just say really quickly, if you think this family isn't something, they have another. These are not ruling or controlling elders, but they just have what I call old elders, and they have these headquarters deep in the mountains of central China, north of Tibet, and in that region. And they have been living there for thousands of years, as over 1,000 years as an organization. And they have senior elders there that are 300 and 400 years old. And it's not just a handful of them. They have a number of them that are that old. And they have longevity programs. They have a guy there that's 350 years old and he only looks like he's 70. You know,
wow.
Because they understand the balance and the harmony of life and how to take care of your body and how to eat the right foods and how to get the right nutrition and stuff like that, and how to think. It's mostly how you think. It's the energy of your thoughts, and they've mastered the aging issue, and they've got some of them that are 300 and 400 years old.
Information to the world, or just keep it secret?
I think we're going to start seeing it coming out in the next 20 and 30 years.
Right.
See, yeah.
We have 3 minutes. What's the most important things you want to convey to our listeners in the next 3 minutes?
The most important thing that I can convey is have hope. This world is getting exciting. This world is changing. We are here to change. Let go of your fear. Let go of your desire to punish and attack others who attacked and victimized you. Get rid of the negativity. Get rid of the fear. Fear is the greatest opposition to love. Love is the most powerful energy that there is in this world. Love changes and transforms all of us, and have love and compassion for those that you have seen as evil. It is love and compassion that changes the energy of the darkness of evil into the power of light. Light always overcomes darkness when you give it love and compassion. Have a world of love and compassion. Become love and compassion yourself. You become that yourself, then you will spread that to the world, and that's the world you will see and experience.
Awesome. Actually, we have 4 minutes. So, Sash, do you have any questions? That's okay. Well, we have a lot of things to cover. What would you like to say?
Let me just share one thing quickly. Can I share one thing quickly?
Okay.
I am living a Tom Clancy novel life. I have Black Ops CIA that hate me with a passion, and they would kill me tomorrow if they could. I have, in the last 3 years, have been living a life that is a dream for most people. I have had all this stuff coming to me, and it just finds me. I don't even try. I have found I am in better shape financially than I've ever been in my life. My life is flowing with what I call an abundance of ease. I have doors that are opening to me that others can only dream of. I have gone down rabbit holes that most think is an illusionary world, and I say, no, it's all very real. But here's what I'm experiencing. I don't have any fear. I don't see the cabal as evil. And I don't see them as a problem. I have chosen to change how I think about them, and I only see them with love and compassion. And because of that, I don't experience fear. I don't experience the cabal, their presence. I don't see or experience or notice these Black Ops people that want to kill me. I've had so many different sources tell you they're out for you. And I said, well, where are they? I don't ever see them. I don't ever experience them. I don't experience them because they are not a part of my consciousness. That is a density of energy that I do not exist in. I choose to see love and compassion. So therefore, that's the world I experience. Even though there's an opposite world out there that they would kill me in a heartbeat if they could. And they can't get at me. Because I absolutely believe I have shifted how I think to surround myself with the power of love and light. And because of that, I have that protection. And that's all that I see and experience. Life is exciting for me. It's glorious for me. It's wondrous for me. And I don't pay any attention to all the problems that are out there, even though I acknowledge that they're out there. I don't allow them to be a part of my consciousness. And because of that, I don't experience those problems and those fears. And that is a Dave Schmidt that didn't exist 5 years ago.
Yes.
5 years ago, I was in a black night of the soul of fear, money problems, my life falling apart, not knowing where I was going and what was going to happen. And in the last 3 years, my life has made a 180-degree turn, and I am loving life, and I love what I do.
Excellent.
And that's what I experience.
1 minute. How to reach you? How to reach you? Yes.
Pardon?
You have 1 minute. How do people reach you?
TheSedonaConnection.com. It's that simple. That's my website. You go to the website. I would encourage you to sign up on the newsletter list. I do a weekly radio program on Wednesday nights. I send out a newsletter on Tuesday nights that is the precursor to the radio program. Most of my newsletter is done in video format and not in written format. I do these workshops that I put on. I will be expanding those after I get my book done. And if you want to be involved in this whole currency exchange stuff, I'd say get on my newsletter list and be patient. That's all I can say about that. TheSedonaConnection.com.
And your next event is here in Maui.
On February 20th. Would love all of you to come.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Dave. Much blessings.
Hello.
Aloha.
Oh, I just want to say I love both of you so much. You've been such an inspiration in my life, and thank you very much. So.